Good morning, you guys. Sorry for that small delay. If you are new here, my name is Royce Hunt Bell, owner and operator of Roycycled Treasures. And oh, I forgot to turn the light on. Hold on one second, you guys. There's always something, isn't there? Oh, that's so much better. Okay, I'm back. Um, If you are new here, my name is Royce Hunt Bell. Welcome to the Hot Mess Express. If you're expecting perfection or organization, you are in the wrong place. Just saying. I am the owner, operator, and founder of Roycycled Treasures, and we are meeting here every day for the month of January in order to do a quick craft. My heart is that if you need a jump start in your creativity for 2026, that you will find it here. For today's project, we're going to be working on those lovely Christmas tins that we all get during the holidays. I kind of fell into a rabbit hole of hat boxes on Pinterest, which is responsible for where we are today. So, um, what I've done is I found three tins that were in graduated sizes and that were roughly kind of the same style of tin. And so over the next 3 days, we'll be working on these three tins together, one each day, in order for me to make a graduated size kind of a hat box stack to use in my living room. And you guys know what that means. It means that our style is going to be industrial. So this is the tin we're going to work on today. I painted this a pickle green because I didn't want to waste paint yesterday, but I'm ultimately going to end up painting over this, but it's fine. Everything is fine. It's fine. It's fine. Everything is fine. Before we get started, I did want to talk about something. I know that I generally show up working with you guys using really pretty designs or farmhouse designs. But I wanted to talk about my favorite segment of designs that Roycycled carries or creates, and that's the industrial style. And when I say industrial, some of the industrial styles are like on the nose, right? They have patina and rust and gears. And so they're like obviously industrial. And some of them are designs that you would just see like in an industrial home. So I wanted to go through these super quickly just to share with you guys. This one, it has been a fan favorite for a long time, although it's just a piece of it, it's not the whole thing. And it is, oh Lord, I forgot the name of it. It went from my brain just that quick because I thought to myself, don't forget the name. And then I forget the name. Um, grunge numbers. This is the grunge numbers. And you guys can see it's just full of grunge and topography. I feel like this one is both industrial, like on the nose, and also industrial. Let me put this fan down here because it's making my voice like ping. And it's also something that you would see in someone's home who loved industrial. I wish I had more of this. Now that I pulled it out, I kind of want to use it, but I digress. And then we have the mud cloth, which is not like obviously industrial, but this is something that you would see in somebody's home who had like a clean kind of a loft industrial aesthetic, right? This one is on the nose, and this one is one of my favorites, and it is cash register. I believe this one has been retired, but I do know that there are retailers, it's just retired, like newly retired. There are retailers who would still have this one in stock. I was sad to retire this one, but you know, we can't keep all the designs. This one is like the bus rolls. I don't know if you guys know this, but back in the day, before we had the digital signs for the buses, there would be a long piece of fabric that would be on a roll and it would be pulled through that window and you could see it. And so I was never able to acquire an actual bus roll. It is one of those things on my picking list that I hope to find someday. But this paper is kind of a smaller version of that roll. And this one is another one that's not obviously industrial, but this is absolutely something that you would find in someone's home who had an industrial aesthetic. This one is it's funny because it's ticking, and you would find this in someone's home who had an industrial aesthetic, someone who had a farmhouse. And I mean, like this one to me, it just crosses different genres, but it's definitely something you would find in an industrial household. This is a map. You guys don't look at how I keep my papers. I'm a mess. This one is the map decoupage paper. I believe this one's been retired, or maybe not. I can't remember. I don't think so. Anyways, this one is not like industrial. There's no grind or anything, but this is absolutely something that you would find in someone's home who had an industrial aesthetic. This one, the printer's block, I love this paper so much. It's not grungy. There isn't any kind of patina, but this is absolutely something that you would find in a home of somebody who enjoyed an industrial aesthetic. And same with this coffee sack decoupage paper. I do think this one has retired. I think I should have possibly made like two different coffee sacks instead of one large one. So I am contemplating that. We'll see what happens. But this coffee sack is definitely something you would find in someone's home who had an industrial aesthetic. This one is a fan favorite, the corrugated metal. This one, of course, crosses farmhouse, country, industrial. I think it would fit in all places. The rivets decoupage paper is like the patina, the rivets, the beautiful rust and teal colors. One of my favorites, obvious, like more obvious and on the nose, right? Industrial. This is a technical drawing, and while there isn't anything inherently industrial, like as far as rust or anything, I do feel like this is absolutely something you would find in someone's home who had an industrial aesthetic. So when we say industrial, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has like rust and patina, although we do have those. Sometimes it just means it's a design that would make sense in a design space of someone who enjoyed industrial and or like steampunkish home decor. And so this one is like on the nose. There's gears, there's patina, topography, and then we have several of our designs that are crate. This is the newest one. It's crate collage. I made this one to be more versatile. You can use it on one larger project, but you also have like small squares if you wanted to make a smaller like crate to use for a craft project. And while it's not inherently like grungy or anything, I think this is definitely something that would fit in an industrial home or even like farmhouse. I think this one kind of transcends as well. Multiple design styles. This one is newly retired, but I know retailers still have it. This is the Labels Master Board. And while there's nothing grungy, I do think it's inherently something that would fit into someone's home who enjoys like industrial. But this one has also, it leans toward that kind of apothecary style, which is my own personal aesthetic. I'm thinking about using this label here on one of our tins, but I haven't decided. And then this is just another example. This is a newer design, and it's basically a master board, right, of on the nose industrial elements. There's gears, there's patina, there's topography, there's rust. You can use it as one piece, but you can definitely use portions of it. I actually made these gears. You can notice that these are smaller on this side, and then you have like larger ones over here. So this really is a master board of sorts. You can use it for multiple small projects, or you can use it on one large project. So for the 3 tins that we're going to do this week, I've kind of narrowed down which papers I possibly want to use, but I'm going to have to ultimately make some decisions about what I'm actually going to use. And honestly, if I had more of this paper, I would probably use it. But okay. So I'm going to set these aside and we're going to get started. I think for today, let's see, this one will be the bottom 10 and it will be the largest one, which means the paper is going to need to go all the way around. So this one, I really am more interested in this bottom portion here than I am in any other portion of the paper. But because the short way won't go all the way around, I think I'm going to save this one for like the second largest 10 and not this one. I could use the matte paper. Honestly, it's a really close tie between these two for the largest one. Oh, what about the topography? I can't make up my mind what I want to do. I love the idea of having the topography on the bottom as the foundation, but there is topography in this one. Let's go with this one. We're going to go with this one for the largest one, and which is the one we're going to work on today. So I'm going to use the printer blocks for this one, and then maybe for the small one, I may just use like some black milk paint on the bottom and put this right over the top, and then maybe use something else over the lid. I don't know. We will see. But for today, we are going to be decoupaging using the printer blocks. And I will be painting this lid. I have a new milk paint today. You guys, I'm like the kids. You know how when your kids are little and they eat macaroni and cheese for the first time, and then you can't give them anything else for like 3 months. They just want mac and cheese. That's how I am when I craft. I'm so ridiculous. So you guys will be seeing a lot of milk paint lately. And I would apologize, but I'm excited and I think it's all good. So this is a color of milk paint I'll be using today. I like it because it's kind of the color of rust. And I think it's going to be so beautiful with this paper. So that's the milk paint I'll be using to paint the lid. But before we get to the lid, I do want to paint our tin. And in order to prep the tin, it's already been cleaned. And I'm actually going to be using some white primer today instead of white paint. This metal is pretty smooth, and so I want to make sure that my base is going to adhere well. And I think that the primer is going to give me the best result for that. And when you're using primer for adherence, you want to look for a gripping primer or a primer that's advertised to have that kind of gripping or adhesive properties. You guys know that primers don't just help with adhesion, although that's one of the things that it absolutely does. Primers also help when you're painting like raw wood, you can deal with tannins. Tannins are like natural oils that are inherent to the wood. And when we use water-based products on the wood, those tannins can rise up. And sometimes it happens late. And it can be so disparaging. You can have a piece of furniture or a project that you've done, and like 2 weeks later, you start noticing orange or purple or yellow spots rising up through your paint. So if you're working with like really old wood and the finish has been broken on that wood, you'll want to definitely start with a coat of primer. And I know a lot of like the chalk paints talk about their adhesive properties, and they do. They adhere really well, but adhesion isn't the only issue, right? If you need to block any kind of tannins or even stains, if someone had like a candle on the top of their dresser and wax, dripped off that candle into that wood, that wax can bleed through your finish and it'll show up like a grease spot on your final finish. And so a good primer can block both wood tannins and also any stains. Cigarette smoke can leave stains in the wood. If it's coming from a home with heavy smokers, and you can get like yellow blotches that bleed through. So prime is what I'm saying. If you're working with raw wood, and it can help to block those. When you are using primer as for stain blocking, you want to let your primer sit for a little bit. I like to let it sit for a few days before going over it with the paint so that that primer can really set up and do its job. Primer is also used to help with coverage. Some colors can be such a pain when you're painting, like red or any jewel tone colors. You guys will notice you have to put a lot of multiple coats in order to get that full coverage. And a good gray primer will really, really help with that. It'll give you a really good head start. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it saves you money because you're going to use a lot less paint in order to get full coverage. But today, we're just worried about adhesion. So I'm going to put one quick coat on here and I'm going to dry it. And I think we're going to be fine. Another option I would have had would be to just use like a 300 grit sanding block or sandpaper and to scuff sand my surface. and then use like a chalk style paint on it, which probably would have been fine. But this was particularly slick, so I wanted to make sure. And if you guys are new to my quick craft mornings, I'm here every, it's afternoon for us, afternoon at noon for a quick craft. I'm saying 20 to 30 minutes, but it keeps growing, anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. And I'm not looking at comments because I want to stay focused so we can get through the project. But I will try to go back and answer the comments that are in there if you guys have any questions. And that primer isn't closing properly, so I will take care of that in a minute. I'm gonna have to put that in the bottle. And I'm just gonna dry this really quickly. Somebody asked about my dryer. This is a heated craft tool and it's by Ranger and I love it. It doesn't blow a lot of air, but it's really, really hot. And so if you're someone who does videos or lives, it's wonderful because it's quiet. And actually, I think that this is going to dry fairly quickly. I'll do one once over, and then we'll set this aside while we paint the top. I should just, you guys know what I've learned. This is like a really cool tip. If you're working on something that you want to dry quickly, we always think in terms of wind, right? So having the air hit the outside paint for it to dry. But like with this dryer, it's really using heat, not air. So rather than spend time going all the way around it and pointing at all the different sections, I'm just going to use it on the inside and I'm going to warm up this entire tin and then set it aside. And then I'm going to be able to speed up my drying process a lot faster without me having to babysit it. So I'm just going to take a few minutes and warm this up. It does work a lot faster with smaller tins, right? Because they're going to hold that concentrated heat better than this one because it's wide open. But I'm just going to warm this up and then I'm going to set it aside and let it dry while we do something else. And what did I do with my lid? Oh, there it is. So yesterday I used 2 teaspoons of that milk paint, and y'all, I did 6 little tins and this with the paint that I had left over from our project yesterday, which is crazy. So I only did like 1 heaping teaspoon today for this. I'll probably still have some left over, but it'll be fine. And I did not bring in any clean brushes, so I'm gonna have to use the ones that are here in my water jar, which should be fine. And I love this color. It is going to dry a little, I'm going to say ashier. That's the only name that I can think of right now than it is right now. But I think it's going to be beautiful against the paper. And this one is going to be on the bottom, right? So it's going to be the largest tin. And so my plan is to make sure that the tin that I put right over this, so the next largest one, I paint the body black. So then I have the black against this really pretty rich color when I create my stack. When I'm creating Roycycled decoupage papers, I'm trying to think of who the customers are and how they use the product and what their styles are. And I try to create something for different aesthetics, different design styles and aesthetics so that there is something for everyone. So if you are a creative business and you're looking for a brand to carry, consider Roycycled. We have a pretty low like entry rate as far as your initial purchase to qualify as a wholesaler. I offer quarterly business training. I have professionals who come inside the group and they teach my business owners how to be more successful in their businesses. We are a small business, and so when you have a problem or an issue, you're not going to talk to like some random person. My team is just not that big. And so you have kind of that direct support. And Roycycled retailers do have access to free decoupage and or stencil training. So whenever you guys see me advertise like my decoupage masterclass, that's something that's on the dashboard for my retailers so that they're equipped, right, to be able to teach decoupage to their customers. So that's my first coat. Let's get a second coat on there. I don't think I'm going to make it in my 25-minute time frame. I'm not good at quick crafts, you guys. Maybe that's the problem. I was gonna paint a 10 before we came on, but I really wanted to spend some time talking about primer because I do think that um, people usually hear like part of the story about what a primer is good for, but it really is important in your creative process. And another color that I didn't mention, so we talked about white primer, which is the primer that most of us are used to seeing. And then there's a gray primer or dark gray primer, which is beautiful to help with coverage, especially for red and jewel tones. And then there's also a clear primer, which I love the clear primer. So I have a piece that I'm going to be working on, and it's one of those pieces that has been in the elements. I found it in a barn. I found the piece of furniture in the barn, and I'm using the door. We'll be using it later this week. And so all of the finish is like I can barely brush on it, and any kind of varnish that was there has crumpled off. So it's raw wood, right? But I do like the idea of being able to distress back to the raw wood. So I'll be using a clear primer on that piece because I do want to use the stain blocking qualities of my primer to keep any tannins from bleeding through my final finish. But I still want to be able to see the wood when I do a distressing to my top layer of paint. So I'll be using a clear primer for that one. And you guys see what I mean by ashy? Like it turned back a little ashy, but we're gonna wax this. And when we wax it, it's gonna it'll be fine. It's gonna turn back to this kind of a richer color. Ooh, it's hot. That's how I figured out the thing with the heat is because I was trying to dry something yesterday and I kept burning myself. And I was like, well, if I just make the whole thing dry, I mean hot, then everything will probably dry faster. I always say that you can watch videos. It's wonderful to watch and to learn. I do a lot of watching myself. But until you get your hands busy doing the thing, you really don't know the information, right? The learning and the growing is really in the doing. And most of the time, not only will you um, learn how to do the thing that you're seeking to learn, but you'll learn something new as well. Because when we're working is when we're learning all the things. I probably made this a little bit too watery, but we're just going to go with the 2 coat. And I'm getting some beautiful crackle on the top. I'm having mixed emotions about that because I'm really not wanting that green to show through, but whatever happens is supposed to happen, right? I like using a generous layer of the milk paint because it does allow it to kind of move a little better and supple. And you get like a nice a nice smooth finish. I think that's why I like the milk paint on um, the wood. On the metal. It's because it makes it look like almost by the time we wax it, like an old enameled piece. Again, I apologize that I'm not looking at comments, but by staying focused, I'm able to bring you guys more concise information. So it's a trade off. But I will go through. I guess if it's live on Instagram, I won't be able to see the comments later. I don't think. I don't know. I'll try. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to set this aside. Um, Oh man. And let that dry. I'm going to warm it up really quickly though. I can't warm up the underside, but this is so thin, any kind of heat is going to warm it up. And actually that green showing through gives it more of like an old school vibe. So I'm not mad at it. And my letters do actually have a little bit of green in them. So maybe it's going to be a fortuitous. Sorry. I don't mind grunge and I like drippy when I'm trying to do it on purpose, like if I'm making a drippy patina, but drips on my paint, I just cannot. I might actually do some wet distress on this one. Once it's dried, to get back to that green a little bit. Sometimes those little things will, I don't know, they just make something look more authentic. And I'm going to set that aside and let it finish drying while we make sure this other one is dry and get it decoupaged. You guys like my fancy jelly jar for my milk paint? Okay, and we are, whoops, completely dry, which is awesome. Let me spend a few minutes and clean up here before I get paint where I do not want it. Okay, so now that my tin is all dry, I do have some spots where I use thicker paint. So let me hit that really quickly. And my coverage isn't like perfect, but it's fine, especially because this piece has a darker background, so it's not going to matter as much. But you guys will notice that even though I'm using a darker decoupage paper, that I'm still painting my tin white. And it's because even though the majority of that design is darker, there are some parts that are lighter, right? And I want to make sure that they are highlighted. So the white background is still going to help to make sure that my design pops. And so this is the printer block decoupage paper that I'm using today. And you know what? Where is my varnish bottle? I really do want to use a varnish to decoupage with today. When I'm doing like a home decor project like this, because I'm probably going to be storing something in here, which means it's going to be like open and closed and handled quite a bit. Um, I prefer to use varnish to both adhere and to seal so that it's nice and durable. I'm choosing this side of the paper because it does have more smaller um, letters in there. And look, it's going to be like the perfect length for my piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm trying to decide because there's a lid on here. I'm only going to go up to this lip right here, and I'll go in and paint this with chalk paint. You guys, there's a lip right here where you can see how far the lid is going to come down because the friction of that lid coming off and on may over time wear my paper. So I'll just have my paper just come up to this lip, and then I'll paint that top part with the milk pink color. And just think, you guys, you can take those Christmas tins and you can make gifts that people will actually like enjoy and use, right? Like, why just throw them out when you can absolutely use them? And I'm using larger tins, like taller ones, but you could do a nesting of the flatter ones too, like the more traditional tins. Like my husband bought me this gigantic tin of Christmas cookies because he knows I love them, and he says they're gonna last me till July now. So he bought me this massive tin, and then I have like a regular size tin that I could put on top of that. And then my daughter-in-law bought me this really cute like baby tin. It's so cute. That went into a basket that she made for us. And so that one can be the top one. So even with the more traditionally shaped tins, you can still do the same thing. And if you're someone who doesn't buy those cookies, you can find those tins at the thrift store really inexpensively. I feel like that's not the right line. I'm not feeling, oh, it is. Okay. So what I did was, since this is such a long piece of paper, I started a mark on either side, and then I folded over and made sure that my sides match. And that helps me to be able to create a straight line across. I match this side and the other side so that I am more assured that this line is going to be straight all the way across. And I'm just going to cut a little bit over, right? Just in case I made a mistake. I'm going to leave myself a little margin of error, but I don't want to wrestle with this entire piece of paper the whole time. So I'm trimming off what I need, and I don't want to ruin this other piece because I still have all of this paper to use for a different project, right? And the Roycycled decoupage paper is an 18-pound tissue paper, so it's a heavier tissue paper. And they are 21 inches by 29 inches. So you get a lot, you get a big bang for your buck when you buy Roycycled decoupage paper. If you are looking for Roycycled decoupage paper, you can find it at roycycled.com. And you can also find a map of retailers, and you can find someone near you who carries recycled paper. So you can go into their shop, you can look at the paper, you can touch it. A lot of us creatives are really tactile, so I get it. Or if you have a retailer who's online, who may be closer to you than I am, you can get a better deal with shipping. So check it out at roycycled.com. And a lot of retailers, especially the ones who've been with me for a really long time, they have designs that aren't available anymore. A lot of them have like retired designs. So you can find them with them. So I'm going to start right here at the seam for a couple of reasons. It's going to help me line my paper up to be straight. Because like if I start like whopper jaws like that, by the time I get around, right, my paper is not going to be, the whole thing is going to be jacked. So it's really important when you're doing a round like this that you start off straight, and you can use this seam to really help inform that decision. So I'm just going to line it up, and I know that I'm going to increase my odds like 20-fold that my paper is going to be straight all the way around if I do that. And I usually talk about a starter row. A project like this is when the starter row is super important, super important. And all I have here is my matte medium. I'm going to go ahead and use the medium to adhere it. So this is what I'm going to do. So sometimes if I have a piece, right, maybe I don't have any water-based varnish here. I do, but I don't know where it is. I'll use my matte medium, or you can use your Mod Podge or whatever for an adhesive. And then I'll go over the top with like, some Rust-Oleum for the clear coat. So that's an option too. And I need a clean brush, which is apparently a commodity around here. I didn't clean my brushes. And Flea, if you're watching, no, I didn't clean my brushes yet. No, I actually did clean some of them. I just didn't. I used these last night. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do my starter row here. Dang it. Hold on one second. Let me. see what happens when you clean your space, you guys? You can't find nothing. I'll sacrifice. I have my cornstarch here in a jar. I'll just use the lid. I can get another lid for that. Okay. So I'm just using some matte medium. I prefer matte. You can use whatever, like if you like gloss or satin or semi-gloss. I know that that's a personal preference. So I'll use matte here. And I'm going to make a nice starter row. You guys will notice that the edge is straight because that's going to make it easier for me to fold my paper back before I move on to the next section. And I'm going to mist my paper. For this paper, because it's such a, the design is really, there's a lot of ink on this paper. If you miss the back, the paper will respond faster because it doesn't have to go through all that ink to get to your fibers. So you can miss the front. Just know that it'll take longer for your fibers to relax when you have a really saturated design. And so I am being really diligent about lining this first row up correctly because I know that it's going to impact the rest of my design. And so really quickly, I'm going to double check and make sure I'm lined up correctly before that row dries completely, so that if I have to make any adjustments, I can. But it looks like I'm good. So I am good to go. I'm just going to mist this portion of my paper because that's about as far as I'm going to go. And I know it's going to take a few minutes for that paper to really relax. So I have time to get my medium applied. Whoops, sorry about that. Making sure that I have full coverage. I get messages a lot about bubbles. And usually if you have bubbles in your decoupage paper, it's because you had an area where you didn't have any medium or there wasn't enough medium. So you really want to make sure that you get medium over the entire surface. You can look from the side to make sure if you see a dry spot, that means that there isn't medium there. And I know I repeat myself a lot. If you guys watch me a lot, you're probably tired of hearing the same thing. However, I learned that people don't always hear what you say the first time. So I say things, especially the important stuff, I'm going to repeat because I want you guys to be successful in creating and being able to customize your space and build a sanctuary for you to be able to like come home to is so important. And so like legitimately this stack is going to go into my living room and I'm probably going to use it like a little extra tabletop. But then I can put stuff like family photos, things that I don't have to access very often is what I'll store in here. So it won't be anything that I'm going to be like getting into every day, but it's things that I want to be able to store away safely. But then this, thing that's going to be in my space will also have a purpose. And I think this is the part that frustrates people when you're decoupaging something larger. And so you guys will notice that because this project is requiring such a larger piece of paper, that I am just moving slow and I'm going section by section, right? I'm not trying to do the whole thing at once. I could have cut this paper in two pieces and done like 1/2 of the tin and 1/2, but I really want to have one continuous piece go all the way around. So I'm opting to do it this way. When using the misting method, you do want to make sure that you use plenty of decoupage medium because the paper is not sucking up the adhesive like it does when it's dry. So you want to make sure that you have enough so that it adheres well. And since I have it turned over, I'm going to go ahead and mist this side. And you guys will notice I'm not like drenching the paper, right? That's why I think a misting spray bottle it's better. I don't want the paper to be insanely wet. I just want it to be damp enough for my fibers to relax so that I can get that wrinkle-free finish that I want. And you guys will notice how when I'm decoupaging, I'm able to lift my paper and reposition my paper. It's still tissue paper. Don't get me wrong. I can't be crazy. But if this were a napkin, I would just be out of luck, right? There's no way that I would be able to reposition this paper. So the heavier tissue paper does make it a lot easier. I'm trying to see where my adhesive is ending. And when I'm rubbing, I'm really not trying to rub out wrinkles necessarily. I just want to make sure there's good contact between the paper and my surface so that it adheres well. Okay. And even if you have like little ripples, what's going to happen is once the paper dries, it'll contract and those will go out. Those will go away anyway. So no worries. And I'm putting on a generous coat of adhesive. You don't want to put like a lot, like you don't want to have like a pool there because if you put too much, you get these weird ripples in your paper. So you do want it to be flat, right? I don't want to have a pool like POOL of product sitting there. But I do want to have a generous amount of product. So I'm going to mist my paper for my last section. You guys will notice that I mist as I go when I'm decoupaging. That's something that I do when I'm doing a larger piece. Your paper is going to dry by the time you get to it anyways, and you're going to end up misting it again. And it just makes it easier for you to take advantage of the misting method while you're working on a larger project. If you guys are interested in learning more about decoupage and you really want to explore like all the options of decoupage, because yes, is decoupage gluing paper to a surface? Absolutely. Like we know that's what it is. But there are so many more possibilities and ways that you can use your paper. And there are so many things that you can do to make sure or to increase the odds of you having success in your decoupage. And I teach all of that in my decoupage masterclass, which you guys can find at roycycledacademy.com. Or even if you go to roycycled.com, there is a tab at the top that says Learn. And if you click that, you guys will see the link for tutorials there. And I am going to dry this before I trim it because I want it to trim nice and straight. I mean clean. If I sand this off now, what's going to happen is A, I'm more likely to tear my paper, and B, it's just not going to be as clean because the paper is going to tear away instead of like getting a nice clean break. And you guys will notice that I have this lip, and I'll cut that after my paper is dry as well. I probably should have trimmed that before, but don't you just love this paper? I legitimately love this paper so much. And I don't know why I don't use it more often. And I'm focusing on this bottom edge right here because that's what I want ¿cómo se dice? To trim instead of trying to focus on the whole tin. That's going to take a few minutes to dry. And then once we get it trimmed, I am going to go through and put a coat of the matte medium over the whole thing. And then I'll spray it later. Or I'll find my water-based varnish and I'll put that over it later. I think we're okay. I'm going to heat this up. Look at my $5 popcorn tin. But it won't look like a $5 popcorn tin when we're done. I don't know why that didn't come off when I cleaned it. Okay. So this is just about a 220 grit sanding. This is just like a sanding sponge. If you're someone who teaches workshops, you can buy a pack of these and they come in this size, and I will usually cut them in half, you know, so that everyone has their own sanding sponge. If you are just coming in, we are working on upcycling some of our holiday tins to practical home decor. Oh man, I heard a tear. That's never good. And this is a popcorn tin that I'm using today. And I have other tins that are smaller and smaller. So I have 3 sizes, graduating sizes. And we're going to make us some like faux hat boxes, I guess. And they won't all match, but they will complement each other. So I am just going to, so if this were completely dry, I would just take my, ¿cómo se dice? My knife, my blade, and I would cut it right there. But I know that this is not dry. So I'm going to cheat a little bit because we're live and I do want you guys to see a final project. That's my promise, you guys, that we'll do our project start to finish on these quick project lives. I'm going to trim it really close and I will come back and trim that later. Whenever you're dealing with moisture, like in these crevices where 2 edges meet, there's always more moisture there than you think, always, because it settles into that crack and it takes a while to dry. So whenever I'm going to use a blade to trim in one of those spaces, I like to wait a few hours before I go in to try to do it to make sure that I get a nice clean trim, especially on a project like this, right? So I am going to go over my entire project with my medium, and then we'll set this aside and let it dry. And although I am using industrial decoupage papers, you guys can still use the tips that I'm sharing with other papers that are maybe more your aesthetic, right? So the design itself is industrial, but the process that I'm using to apply it, you can apply to any design. And this is bent too, but I kind of like that even. And my paper isn't really perfectly straight all the way around. I'm going to show you guys in a minute, but it's close enough. And when the lid is on, nobody will know. Nobody will ever know. And I'm not going to put any adhesive right here because I don't want that paper to lay down. And so that is how I approach decoupaging a large, project. So step by step, mist as you go, and take your time, right? Where are we? Oh my gosh, we're 50 minutes. I'm fired. So let's warm this up. We're going to do a wet distress really quickly, and then we will finish up with this design. And I do want to add some clear wax and dark wax to this. So hopefully you guys will be patient. Maybe my project isn't so quick. It's quick-ish. How about that? David's going to laugh at me because my husband David is the other half of Roycycled Treasures, and this is his idea for me to come and do like a quick live every morning for the month of January. But they're not supposed to be longer than like 25 minutes. I'm fired. But at 2 a.m., that's what time I went to bed today. I was tired on the couch, right? But I get in bed and my mind clicks and it starts thinking about all the things that we can do together. So I was up for another hour this morning. So yes, 3 a.m. was my bedtime. But so is the mind of the creative, right? If I had gone to bed earlier, I probably would have been up at 2 o'clock thinking about it anyways. I didn't get a ton of crackle with this one, so I'm going to go in and we're going to do a wet distress with this. So there are several ways that you can distress a finish. The two ways that we see mostly are I could take a sanding block and I could sand this back. But to me, when I use a sander, I get like a really like a straight distress, right? Like it's super concise. You can see exactly where the sander went and the edges are like really sharp. I'm wanting something a little softer than that. So I'm just going to use some water and a towel. And because I haven't sealed my milk paint yet, I'll be able to do this. And so I'm just going to wipe back in some areas. And what I'm going to get is like a more organic distress. It's not going to be as, oh, look at some of that red of the original paint is coming through too. This is going to be gorgeous. And these colors are in the paper. They're subtle. They're not like, really noticeable, but they are there. So I think that this is going to make it really pretty, having some of those colors show up. And you see how it's a really organic shape that you're making, and it's not super sharp like you would get if you were using a sanding block. And that's what I was looking for here. Let me add some more water. Whenever I'm distressing, I always think about like, where would this item, like if it were, a vintage, item, where would it be touched a lot, right? Like where would it have received the most natural distress? So I imagine somebody taking the top off a lot, right? So there's probably a space where that was favored more along the edges, where it may have rubbed against the cabinet that it was being stored in. I like to give my project stories when I'm working on them. And it kind of informs, I don't know, how I'm going to approach it and what I'm going to do. And at first, I was kind of not liking that green, but that green peeking through really does give it a little something. And I do have a little bit of speckle here. Let's see if I can agitate that. I don't want to sand it though. Ooh, I like it. That's nice. We have the wet distress, and then we have some crackle too. And so you guys can see where I have areas where I've wiped it back, and that green is just peeking through just a little bit. And so to seal this, I'm going to start with my clear wax first. If I go in with my dark wax, this really porous paint will suck it in really fast, and it'll get really dark really fast, which if that's what you want, right, then that's fine. But if you want to have a little bit more control over how the dark wax is absorbed, you can start with some clear wax first. Oh, I love this so much. And that's already like beautiful, right? And now we're going to push it even further by adding some dark wax. And I think I'm going to focus on this like little lip right here with the dark wax. And then I'll go over with a lighter hand on the rest of it, and then we'll wipe it back. And I'm using a lint-free cloth because I don't want to have a bunch of lint caught in my wax, right? And I'm just going to kind of pull off any extra wax. And I think that is fabulous. I love it. And I can go in and add dark wax like where I want it. And I'll probably go back and forth. I won't do it here with you guys, but just know that you're not like, I don't know. Sometimes we feel like, oh, we have to get it right the first time. But I feel like by having the clear wax first, I can always go back and add more dark wax if I want, right? I will say that you can see my paint strokes there a little bit. I probably should have like done like a really light sand, like a 300 grit sandpaper in between my layers, and I wouldn't have that. But for this project, I don't hate it. Like it just looks like something old that I would have pulled out of a barn, which I do quite often. So that's my lid, super cute. And then this is my bottom, which is almost dry. So I'll just put the lid on there and we'll look at the project for the day. Let me, I'll do this. This project is kind of bigger than our other one, so I'm not able to show everything on the table. So this is our project for the day. And so I'm going to go in and I'm going to paint that lip because you guys can see my paper isn't perfectly straight all the way around. I started out really close and I went off a little bit, but that's not bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to paint that lip the same color as the lid so that that is a lot less noticeable. And this will be the bottom of my stack of cans. And isn't that so pretty? And a lot better than the holiday tin. And the dent that I have here on the side, it's dented. there's two dents, to me makes it look even more authentic. That it might be something old that I found in a barn somewhere. So that is all I have for today. You guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed this project. Please come back tomorrow. I will be here again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Yes. Um, and we will be doing our second tin, the one that stacks on top of this one. And we'll be doing some more painting and decoupaging. And I hope to see you here. Remember, if you are looking for Roycycled decoupage paper, then you can find it at roycycled.com. And you can also find retailers who carry the Roycycled decoupage paper. If you want to walk into a shop, there may be somebody near you. Or if you have an online shop that's closer to you than I am, then you'll probably get a better rate on shipping. You guys have a blessed day. You guys remember, where experimentation goes, creativity follows. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a blessed day.